Welcome along to Kokoda Tips from me, Scott Whimpey, First Aid Accident Emergency. You can view all this information at firstaidae.com.au, that's my website, to have a look for any of the tips that I'm giving today. First, I've identified two key points for you. Nutrition is the first one that I wanted to talk about, and then injuries is the second part of this presentation that I'll be giving you today. First of all, nutrition. When you're out there for a time frame of 15 to 30 hours, then your body's going to use certain fuels that you do need to replace. A couple of major things that I've pinpointed for you that can help you get to the finish line with this is replacing your carbohydrates and also staying hydrated, and they're probably two of the big tips that I can give you. We're sponsored, our Nike team this year is sponsored by Hammer, hammernutrition.com.au, and I wanted to just show you the Perpetuum. Now the Perpetuum is a really good fuel that you can take on board with you when you're actually out there hiking, walking, running, whatever it is that you'll be doing. The good thing about the Perpetuum is it has a good amount of potassium in it, which is stopping cramping. It has a great amount of sodium in it as well for salt replacement, which you will be going through a lot of your salt when you're sweating. And it has carbs and also protein to help this absorb very quickly into the system. So this can be mixed up in a fuel bottle, and the fuel bottles that you can mix this up into is something like this, and I'm recommending that you're actually sipping this fairly regularly through the course of the event. Now, general rule of thumb with taking something like this is carbohydrates generally, I'm about 60 or 60 up to 65 kilos, so you want about 65 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Now that's how we work it out when we're running our 12 hours for the event. I would probably half that, so I'd probably take about 30 grams of carbohydrate per hour, and don't overdo it too much with things in your stomach, but you do need to make sure that you're getting this into your system correctly. Other things that you can use when you're out there to fuel your system, which you will need, things like the Hammer gels or a gel of some sort. Now, carrying these gels can be they're designed to carry on the trail with you, but if you tear the top off one of these and mix 4 or 5 into one of those with a bit of water to water it down so you can actually get it out, and a lot of these fuel bottles are actually marked so you can actually have a look where they're designed to drink down to. Don't take big gulps of these, you just want small sips about every 15 minutes and keep this up. The other thing that you can use as well is the bars, and again carbohydrates, these have got a great amount of carbohydrates, same with the gels as well, and this will help you to absorb your carbs a lot quicker. Now of course you can't just take this, you also need I'm saying about a water bottle, which is a 750ml water bottle, about every hour to hour and a half when you're out there, just for your general hydration, and this helps to dilute this into your system and keeps you cramp free in the stomach. Okay. The other thing that I can recommend, obviously, going with all your natural foods, things like your bananas, great amount of potassium in there for cramping and things like that, and also your nuts, your natural foods, things like your lollies as well, which you can take out there when you're out. I wanted to show you the fuel belts. We use something like this. These fuel belts basically just go around here like this. I like the 4 fuel belts because if you're in between your 5 major checkpoints, then you can pretty much have everything you need on here. The other thing that people use are your hydro packs, which are on the back. They take a fair while to fill up, whereas these you can buy extra bottles, have your support crew fill your bottles up. I'll have 2 of these full of water, and the other 2 I'll have one of Perpetuum and one of gels mixed in, and I'll be just sipping everything gradually as I'm moving along, as well as having a few of the bars here and there, just to have a bit of food as well. So that's really it for the hydration and food side of things. What I'd also now like to talk about is injuries. Now, at the halfway point of the Kokoda last year, at the Environmental Centre, I had a lot of people coming into this section, and having fitness is one thing, being psychologically prepared is another thing. Going up the hills is tough, but coming down the hills is where this is really going to hurt you. So I wanted to give you some tips on how to look after your knees and how I looked after people last year, and also on the mini Kokoda this year, how to get through this particular event and get to the finish line. Okay, the first thing I will say to you is make sure that you are quite friendly with anti-inflammatories. Voltaren or something like that is quite good. You can get a prescription anti-inflammatory, but you need to have food in your stomach with it as well. and you can take those prior to the event. Some of the prescription ones are the night before, so you can take them, but they also work quite effectively within about 15 minutes. Take these with you on the trek. The big problem with the knees is when you actually are walking, coming down the hills, and I will just show you my knee here. What actually happens is every time you take a step and you come down the hill, this section through here tightens up, which is your ITB band. This is a fascia and it doesn't have a lot of blood in it, so it does tend to get quite sore. Now what this will actually do is it starts to pull the kneecap aside and you feel like your kneecap's going to tear off. So what I've prepared is just a standard compression bandage here, and you can take this with you on the trek as well. And what you would do, you can do this prior to having knee problems if you have a knee problem. You're going to go over the top of the knee, so not directly over it, but up above it by about 5 or 10 centimetres. And you're going to wrap this compression bandage directly around the top part of your knee, okay? And you're going to make this quite firm on here. Now it needs to be firm enough to be able to feel it, but not so tight that it cuts off circulation. Alright, so you're pretty much going around the top section of this knee like this. Once you get to the end, you can either tuck it in or you can just take that section there, and that will hold that in place. Now these absorb sweat as well, so they are quite good, and this keeps a continual strain on your ITB band and it stops that pounding every time, and this will reduce pain and help. The other things that you can use as well are things like your compression skins, which you'll see on my other leg here. This has the same effect, and you can use a compression garment over the knee as well. This stops all the vibration and the movement in the muscle and stops the lactic acid and also the blood building up, keeping the blood away. These are very good, and you can use the compression garments coming down to here as well, down to the knee. You can use something over the knee as well, which can help you. Moving down a little bit further down to the bottom of the foot here, I wanted to talk about blisters on feet, because blisters on feet are a big problem. Now, this is an Injinji sock that we've come across in the Nike Hammer team, and a lot of people have. The good thing about this is it's an individual toe wrap, and it stops toes from rubbing together and causing blisters. Now, Injinji, I-N-J-I-N-J-I is the name of the sock. You can get them at some of the sporting retailers or order them on the internet as well. Tape the individual toes. Now, I recommend a good quality cloth tape for this one here. This is just a 3M product. Try a few different tapes before you actually get out, because some tapes are hopeless and they don't stick. This particular one here, I've actually wrapped one of my toes up prior to this as well, so I wanted to show you what a taped toe would look like. Okay, so what we'll be doing is taping the areas that are the big problems. So here's an individual taped toe, and I've taped that up individually. I pretty much just take a section of tape which is about 15 or 20 centimetres long, and I just wrap that around each individual toe and go around. Other spots that you can wrap up is across the ball of the foot down through this section here, around the heel of the foot as well. Tape any areas that you think are going to be the problems. The other big tips that I can recommend with blistering, because blistering will put a third of the people out in the race, is to have 2 pairs of shoes when you're actually out there on the day. A lot of people have gone for hiking shoes. I'm recommending hiking and maybe even a set of running shoes. You know, something like obviously we're wearing the Nikes for the day, but a nice comfortable set of running shoes. These are built for forward motion. They have good cushioning in the front, and they're very, very soft on your feet. The reason for 2 pairs of shoes and a few pairs of socks is because these shoes and socks will get wet from either sweat or the 9 creek crossings that you'll do through the 36 hours. Couple of tips for drying these shoes. All these shoes have inner soles that pull out. Pull the inner soles out so you can dry underneath. Tie the shoes to the rear vision mirror of the support vehicle's car. Get them to drive along to dry them out, so in 2 or 3 checkpoints time, or in 5 or 6 hours time, you have another set of dry shoes to hop in. Okay, so this is very important to make sure that your feet are dry. Other tips for keeping your feet blister free would be one of the members from our team, Peter Hall. He will wear a very thin pair of socks over his foot with no tape whatsoever. He'll put Vaseline all over the top of that thin sock around the areas that are prone to blister, and this is a good tip from the Kenyan athletes as well. And then he'll pull another pair of socks over the top of that and put them into the shoes. Okay, I'm Scott Whimpey from First Aid Accident Emergency. You can check this out on my website, and also at hammernutrition.com.au for all of your nutrition needs.